Welcome, everyone, to a special edition of the California Library Association Ursula Meyer Library Advocacy Training Program. Today, we're in conversation rather than doing a live workshop. This will tie into some events that are coming up soon. This recording is being made in mid-August with Hillary Thayer, who is with the California Library Association, Monterey County Public Library. She's the chair of the Ursula Meyer Endowment Committee and many, many other things. And we're lucky enough to have with us Christopher Lopez, who's a county supervisor in Monterey County. Before we jump into live action, there is a screen that you're seeing right now, which describes what our ongoing series is about. So I'm going to give us about 30 seconds for the people who are watching this on YouTube to see the background of the program, and then we're going to jump live into the conversation.
All right. Well, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. And first, thank you so much, Supervisor Lopez, for taking your time for us today to talk to library advocates across the state and help them participate in the advocacy process. Thank you so much. And
Thank you
I
for
do,
having me.
sure
It's an honor.
thing. And I
Yeah.
do want to just be transparent that you are on the Board of Supervisors for the County of Monterey, and I am an employee of the County of Monterey. So for full transparency, and we get to work together quite a bit on library issues and concerns. So let's start by tell us a little bit about your district here in the county.
Yeah, so I represent Monterey County's third district. It's the largest geographically. Obviously, the districts are broken out population-wise to have a fifth in each one, but I represent parts of Salinas, which is obviously in this heart of the Salinas Valley, all the way south to the tiny town of San Miguel, which abuts San Luis Obispo County, and then from the top of the Santa Lucias, not touching the coast, all the way east to parts of Coalinga, touching Fresno and Kings County. So land-wise, that's twice the size of state of Rhode Island, 6 square miles larger, in fact. And geographically, that means that there's a lot of challenges for my community in accessing resources. It's an area that is well known as the salad bowl of the world. We provide the leafy greens that the world enjoys consuming. And the people who live here work really hard to make that happen. And it's not a field where you can imagine folks take home a lot of money. And so bringing public resources to them has been a key goal for me. The spread of that ground, that mass of that district makes that a really big challenge for us in a community that's so constrained. I often share with folks when I say, I represent Monterey County. How many of you, when you think Monterey County, think of Carmel, Big Sur, the Bixby Bridge, and folks raise their hand, and I say, yeah, I don't represent any of that, and their hands go down. Everybody laughs, and see, I represent that other side. We have to pierce that lettuce curtain to look into this valley to understand those challenges. I'm proud to represent this area of hardworking people, a lot of immigrants. I come from an immigrant background. My father immigrated here at 13, used his public library to advance his education, and through that, he went off to college and opened doors for so many in our community, including myself, to be in a position to make positive change moving forward.
That's awesome. And I know I expect that many in your district don't feel that they can reach out and touch their deciding government. It's a meeting in Salinas that may just seem so far away to many in your district.
And it really is. I mean, the geographic spread's one thing, but even the lack of public transportation to get from a tiny town like King City, Greenfield, Soledad, Gonzales, all of which I represent as incorporated cities, or Chular, San Ardo, San Lucas, who are not incorporated, it can feel and often is a 4 to 5 hour trip in terms of changing buses to get from those little communities to the heart of Salinas and to make a 9 o'clock meeting in the morning, typically it's not going to happen. And so that challenge, that barrier in accessing their government has been one of those things that we've tried to break down. Obviously, Zoom has been a help, but broadband doesn't exist in a robust way in South County outside of our libraries, in my opinion. And it's a very big challenge for our residents to feel seen, heard, and included in the decision making of their government. One of my goals was to move my district office. We used to be in Salinas, outside of the district. And when I got elected, my commitment was we're going to move into the district. We're now in King City, which some people say, well, that's the town furthest south. Geographically, it's the center of the district. There's just so much ground around us that through that, we've been able to create access for community. But you're right, in terms of decision making process, folks can feel left behind.
Yes. And part of what we're talking about today is that public meeting.
Yeah.
So the decision-making moment, there might have been a lot of background, a lot of papers read, a lot of briefing meetings, but that moment when you are sitting in your elected position live in front of the public, actually voting and making the decisions that impact their libraries. So as an elected official, how important is it to you when members of the public do come speak to you directly and participate in the public meetings? Is this better, different than maybe sending an email or making a phone call?
I'd say it's the most important piece. We're committed as elected officials to keep an open mind when we make decisions from the dais, whether you're a city council member or a county supervisor. But when you walk into that room, there's a certain understanding that the folks who took time from their busy day to show up, to sit and wait for their item to come up, and to publicly advocate for what they want, need, or desire in their community, you give that extra weight, whether you want to or not. There is a bias to it. I've seen hearts changed, minds changed on that dais based on the comments made from the crowd. So if you're asking me how I weigh that and how impactful it is in terms of all the options, whether that's writing a letter, sending an email ahead of time, a social media post, I'd say showing up and testifying for those 2 minutes available to you, average throughout the state, is the most impactful thing you can do to bring that change that you are advocating for to your community.
Yeah, it can be really nerve-wracking for the member of the public. I've worked in government for 35 years, and the first time I got up before my own city council, my knees were knocking, my voice was shaking. So do you have any just guidance, tips, tricks on the person who goes, oh, I could never do that. I would be too nervous.
I'd say what connects from these moments, that as much as it feels like often there's a dais or a table separating the public from the decision-making body, what connects is authenticity. And if you allow yourself to feel that moment, talk about your shaky breath, talk about the stress that you're feeling, be honest with the people on the other side of the table because they're humans and we all had that moment. I remember the first time I ever gave a public talk when I announced I was running for office, and my hands were shaking. I was holding my piece of paper and I was reading from it. I don't use a piece of paper anymore. I've come a long way from that, but it took practice. But I hold that moment as a key and pivotal moment for myself. And most elected officials who had to go through an election, who sit there to make those decisions, had that moment too. So when you sit there and authentically say, I am nervous, right? My hands are shaking, and please bear with me as I try to get my point across because it matters to me. Being honest about what you're feeling can break down that barrier between you and that person who might seem like they're sitting a mile away or already have their mind made up, and humanize each of you in that conversation, which is what's happening. So I'd say owning that moment and being authentic and honest about your feelings, both about what you're talking about, but also in what you're feeling in that moment of stress, is important and helps make a connection that will help you move the needle on the project you're advocating for.
Yeah, awesome. I can't imagine everybody on the dais is as calm as they may look like they are at all times.
We never are. I can see their legs under the tables. They're shaking, or some people have the different ticks, and we learn to read each other up there week after week.
Yeah. Um, is there a difference if somebody is coming with a specific ask? So there's an item on the agenda and they're saying, yes, vote for it. No, don't vote for it. Or they just want to come maybe under general public comment and say, support libraries or support children via libraries. Is there differences in that? And should they prepare different things?
I'd say it depends. I know we've got folks from a spread of different types of organizations, community advocates here, perhaps tuning in to listen at any point when this is available. And I'd say that depending on your organization's style, ability, and reach, one of the things I advise local groups on is show up before you have an ask. Introduce yourself, right? For a lot of our college students specifically, we have a couple community colleges that are very effective. And my recommendation to them about a decade ago was don't just show up on the day you haven't asked. Send the students, have one a month show up and say, hey, I used the program you helped fund. It changed my life in this way, and I'm having a great outcome thanks to your investment. I have no ask, just thank you so much for continuing to invest in our education and walking away. That light touch for a large organization, building up to some moment, right? Inevitably, when that budget ask will come, folks will remember Those 7 students who came throughout the year and shared their personal journey with us, that's why we're doing this, not just because we're at a pressure point and some organizations falling short. It has real impact on lives. But at the same time, if it's your first time, don't feel like, well, I missed that boat and I can't do that. No, showing up, even if you can't make the meeting, say, the meeting is on June 17th and you're sitting here June 1st, but there's a meeting on June 8th. Show up. Say, I know it's not on your agenda today. I can't make the next meeting, but I want to advocate because it matters to me. That sort of proactive nature and being clear about why you're making your ask and what the impact has been on you is going to move that needle with the elected officials and the appointed officials making these decisions. I'd say that the most important piece, in my opinion, is be, as I shared earlier, authentic or genuine, and don't read from a pre-written, right? So this is to those folks helping to build an advocacy piece around a single ask. Have people tell their individual stories. I get form letters all the time, and I'll tell you, I read the first line, and when I read that it is a form letter, it goes in the pile, and I count. All right, I got 24 of those. That's great, but it's not as impactful as the person who took the time to change that first paragraph to say, I have a 4-year-old, and because this library was open, I was able to go there on a Saturday, and staff helped me fill out a job application and helped me make sure that my child was entertained with the right books, with the right reading levels, so I could get this accomplished during that time. And that's why we need to fund libraries. It's those personal stories that connect more, that linger with you and remind you the importance of the work that our libraries do.
Well, that's awesome. See, you're making me tear up already. Just you're telling me that story is one of
Yeah,
those we know it, but being told it helps us know it, really, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Um, what are some other ways, and you've touched on a couple with the letter,
Mhm.
but the letter tells a personal story, other ways that library advocates throughout the state should speak to their elected officials about their libraries. If it's not that formal item at a public meeting, but they really want to communicate with you in person. Do you have other tips, suggestions on how to do that?
In person or in general?
In general, we can
In
cover in general.
general, I think as a younger, right, I'm going to turn 40 this year, so I'm putting my number out there. As a younger elected official, I was elected at 32. I do look to social media. Some electeds don't, but I think knowing who your audience is and being able to build that advocacy, tagging them in a post, and to me, videos are very effective because community engagement on that video, you'll tend to see 500, 600 likes. People love their libraries. They mean more than just a place to check out a book. This morning, I was sitting here with my staff and they were bragging to me about all these audiobooks that they're getting through Libby, which is the partnership we have through our library, and telling me that I need to get on it and start using Libby rather than buying my books. Well, I like to support the authors too, but they're reminding me that those resources impact us in so many ways. This weekend, my wife taught a class on beekeeping targeted at children in our library. Out the beekeeping outfit, and she was worried no one was going to show up. There were 30 people there. Our libraries are hubs of connection for community, and they're this incredible resource that most folks haven't interacted with the library in the last 15 years, remember their childhood and going and pulling a book. So all this is to say that the more you can tell the elected official the impact of beyond what they have a preconceived note about is important, and using unique methods like social media where other folks in those comments are saying, hey, here's what I used it for, right? If you use that interactive nature of social media to ask a question of your audience and tag the elected officials in it, what you're going to do is create a scenario where they're going to have to come because they got tagged on it to look at what is this. And when you see 50 comments, people say, I used it to fill out a job application, to apply for food assistance. I used it as a place to, really cool down during a heat wave. All those pieces and those critical things that our libraries do for our community are going to resonate more in a meaningful way because those each are personal pieces of testimony. Others, that might not be their forte. And I'd say the most impactful is showing up or running into somebody in a grocery store and taking that second, right? I wouldn't say tie them down for 20 minutes, but mention to them when you run into them, right? Just say, to me, my library has been a lifesaver. Thank you so much for funding it. It doesn't have to be a clean ask, just saying thank you and reminding them that it matters to you is going to have a lasting impact. Those grocery store interactions, those drop-off moments with my kids at their school, those last with me, and I know they do with so many others. But it's being willing when you see someone in public to use 10 seconds and just say, hey, I want you to know, and it matters, and thank you. That alone, that'll go a mile when you may think you're only trying to get a couple 100 feet.
Wow. That's great. That is great tips and tricks. And sometimes advocates spend all the time writing and then they go, but I don't know what happened with that. Did I make a difference? Was I just a voice in the wilderness? Were they tuning out? And I think these personal stories really help see from the other side of the dais, from the decision makers, as to what really does matter. And I know I wanted to ask if there's anything else you wanted to share with potential library advocates. And I particularly was another barrier that people say is I don't speak English very well.
Yeah.
And I know that across California, different jurisdictions are all over the map in terms of language and interpretation and accessibility, but that's really important to you. Did you want to talk about somebody who may say, I can't speak English very well. I can't do this.
Absolutely. I think when our communities here in Southern Monterey County attempt to connect with their government, they feel like that's not a space for me. We did a unique thing when we got elected, and I say we because I know I do nothing alone. I've got an incredible team of women who help me in this office touch community and make sure that everybody knows their government's working for them. We had a lot of people not show up to our initial rounds of what we call listening sessions, where rather than showing up and talking to people for an hour and say, now we have 15 minutes for Q&A, we do it the other way. We say, what are your questions? And once they're out, then we'll maybe update you on the latest. It flips that. And a lot of folks started talking about how they didn't feel seen or heard based on the language they were speaking. And I'm not just talking English and Spanish, which most people in California either speak or know someone who does and have a resource nearby. In our communities, we have a lot of indigenous languages from Mexico that are not written. And it makes it really difficult for people to feel seen and heard by their government when they can't communicate. And our libraries, though, are that place where our kids get that first introduction to other languages. And having somebody show up, I'm going to be honest, at a public meeting who does not speak English or Spanish and making the board or deciding body realize this is a person we've touched and that we can't yet directly communicate with, but they're here to advocate for their library. Look at how broad that community is. Look at the impact that this resource is having in my community. I've had some of those folks show up to my meetings and say, this is where I learned to speak English and start the process of naturalization, to go through learning American history and get some of those resources so I could be part of the process. It's given me an opportunity that lasts, that lingers for people who believe so much in democracy that they're willing to put their name on a piece of paper and ask their neighbors to vote for them. Those stories matter. And access and equity is so critical. One of the key things that I see happening at our libraries is the internet. We talked a little bit about the lack of internet within Southern Monterey County and real defined broadband by the federal government's 100 over 100. We're lucky to get 19 over 25 in terms of downloads and upload speeds. And it is critical for our community to have that because that's where education, where medications, where banking, everything lives online. But the cost to get that lower speed internet in my communities is $150, $200 a month. It's really expensive because of that lack of access. It's a weird thing when you don't have it and they charge more because you don't have it. But our libraries are providing that for free. And I know when I drive by any of our branches and I look over in the evening and see 20 people sitting outside on their phones, they're doing their banking, they're doing their communication with their doctors, their mental health professionals, they're communicating with folks back in their country of origin in certain instances. That hub, that our role that our community libraries play is so important in making folks feel seen and heard in that first step in their government. And so if you're asking, should we include some of those people in our advocacy and have them show up to boards and speak? Absolutely. Have them tell their story because that is a point that, as a nation of immigrants, somebody on that dais knows grandma, grandpa showed up at one point, didn't speak the language. And yes, there is a hub for those people showing up, willing to play a part in the future of this country and being willing to educate themselves. And this resource is for all. And that is the beauty of those final words of our Pledge of Allegiance, right? It's for all. And I think our libraries are for all. And for me, that's just such a critical piece of what we do in terms of funding our libraries and making sure that they're accessible for everyone.
Well, thank you so very much for taking the time for us today, taking the time to speak to library advocates across California. You may run into some of us as you're tooling around the state and attending your meetings, and hopefully we're spreading some lessons so that all the library advocates can effectively speak to their local and state elected officials about what they care about. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Hillary. My final ask would be say
Mhm.
thank you, right? If they vote the way you wanted them to, say thank you after in a follow-up, and don't do it the week after when it's easy. Do it a month after, do it 2 months after. Remind that person that they followed through and that you saw it and that it meant something to you. That alone is a big part of human connection and folks feeling like this is a group that I positively impacted. So my recommendation, spread those out over time. Continue to thank them because when next time it comes up, they'll remember that too.
Awesome.
Thank you, Hillary. Thank you, Christopher. We've broken
Yeah.
ground here today with a new interview format for this program. And for those of you watching us for the first time, do go back to our YouTube channel. Check out the over 40 workshops that we have there now, free of charge. They're all on the California Library Association YouTube channel. And we hope to see you each month, usually on the second Wednesday of the month, 10 o'clock Pacific time. Occasionally we change, or do check the calendar, and the events are all listed on the California Library Association calendar of events. Have a wonderful day.